Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Welcome, everyone. We're good. All right, it is 2 o'clock Eastern time, so I am going to go ahead and get started. You're welcome to log in anytime. This broadcast will be recorded, and that YouTube link that I sent out to everybody that registered is going to stay live. So you can visit it at any time. We don't plan on taking it down anytime soon, and we'll let you all know if for any reason that we have to. But I'm going to get started. Just a few quick notes. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm doing here. Just a few things. If you are using the Google Plus Hangout to view the webinar, I just want to real quick show you that that you can do the QA. So when you go into the Google Plus Hangout, on the screen, you're going to see something like what I've got on my screen. Sorry about the double up there. But if you go into there, there's a little rectangle made out of 9 rectangles. If you click on that, you'll get a link to Q&A. So if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them in there. If for some reason you can't get in there, that's not a problem. You're welcome to you're welcome to email me. I will try to check my email every 15 minutes or so during the webinar. I may not be able to. If you want to really ping me, I am on Google Hangouts as Chrissy at pongos.com. It's CHRISSY at pongos.com. So you can just ping me that way, and I will answer your question as soon as we get to a stopping point. I do also usually stay on for a little bit after the official close of the webinar. So if you have any questions after, you are welcome to ask them there. And I'll also give you instructions for asking them on the website. So if you come up with a question tomorrow or next week or anything like that, you are still welcome to ask those questions. So we are here for the WordPress crash course. Hopefully you all signed up through learn.pongos.com. One thing I did want to mention is you do have access to a online course. It's basically just a text version of everything that I'm telling you now. You'll have access to the slideshow on there, and you'll also have access to a bunch of notes that I added in there and links to everything. So if you want to look at that after the class, you're welcome to. It'll be up indefinitely. You'll have access to it indefinitely. We don't plan on taking it down at any point, so you can just go ahead and do that. All right, so for the WordPress crash course, this is our course outline. First thing, what is WordPress? We're going to take a look at what that is. What are your hosting options? So once you know what WordPress is, where can you host it? How can you manage content? And how can you customize the appearance? And then finally, how can you extend functionality? So those are the topics that we're going to cover over the next 2 hours in this course. All right. One thing I want to note is in the presentation, and you'll be able to access a copy of this presentation. It'll be in a PDF format. Just want to note that there are some links labeled demo. If you try to open those links on your computer, they might not work unless you have WordPress installed on your computer the same way that I have it installed, in which case it might work, it might not work, but they should work. The purpose of those demo links is for me to be able to show you some of the features in WordPress by just clicking on a link instead of having to type in a URL and all that extra stuff. All right, so first off, what is WordPress? First thing, most important thing I think about WordPress, and the reason that a lot of folks really like to use it is a super easy to use system. Once we take a look in the dashboard, in the admin interface for WordPress, you'll see, if you haven't already started working with WordPress, that it's very, very easy to use. Second of all, it's widely used. It's actually the most widely used of the content management systems. And that includes open source, proprietary, or anything. The only thing that's more widely used than WordPress is just plain old static HTML, or and that's probably a little harder for a lot of the average users to work with. So one thing to consider here is, thanks in part to the ease of use, WordPress is used by about 23% of all websites. That's every single website out there. 23% of them are running on WordPress. And again, it is the most widely used of all content management systems. We have an estimate of about almost 61% of all websites that are built using a content management system are built in WordPress. So there are a lot of users in WordPress. Next thing is, it is a content management system. If you've never heard that term before, don't worry. Content management system, we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that is a little bit later, but it is a what's called a content management system, or a CMS. Okay, it's also built in PHP and MySQL, plus HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Don't worry if you don't understand any of that alphabet soup. It's okay. You don't have to know any of those in order to use WordPress. That's, again, going back to the ease of use. It's super easy to use. You don't need to be a programmer or a web developer to use WordPress. So PHP is a server-side scripting language. MySQL is a database. HTML is the client-side scripting language that determines the structure of your pages. JavaScript is another client-side scripting language, and CSS is what determines the appearance of your web pages. So all of those languages put together, and sometimes a few extras, are what we use to run WordPress. Okay, another big deal about WordPress is that it's open source, and you may have heard that term before. If you're not sure what it means, don't worry. I'm going to tell you in just a second. But open source is a really big deal. There are several open source content management systems, but again, WordPress is the most widely used. Open source means that the source code for WordPress and for any other open source software is publicly available. And in the case of WordPress, it's distributed with something called a GPL v2 license. That's a GNU or GNU public license. So now WordPress is often referred to as free software, but keep in mind that's free as in free speech and not necessarily free as in free beer. That's a saying that's thrown around in the open source community a lot, and I will explain a little bit more about what that means a little bit later. But just a few things to think about when you receive a copy of WordPress. You have a few freedoms, and these are the free parts for WordPress. Number one, you have the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose. So you can run it on your computer, you can put it up on a hosting provider, you can run it for any reason that you want. So any website you want, you are free to do what you want with it as far as running it. You're also free to study the program and change it. So once you have the source code for it, if you are a programmer, you are a PHP developer, you're allowed to take the source code for WordPress and you can change it if you want to. I can't say I would recommend doing that, but it is something that you can do if you wish. You then also have the freedom to redistribute copies of the program. So if you've received a piece of software that is using a GPL v2 license, once you receive that software, you can then give it to other people if you want to. One thing to note on that is when you give it to those other people, you can charge them for it if you want to. Even if the original source was not didn't have a cost associated with it, you can charge for it. And that's one thing that some providers will do. The other thing, you are free to distribute copies of your modified version. So if you've gotten a copy of WordPress and you've made changes to it, you can distribute those copies to other people. Now, one thing I want you to remember is that free software does not mean non-commercial software. Free software and non-commercial, well, it can be non-commercial, which means you're not getting any money for it. But free software doesn't necessarily mean non-commercial. The software itself could have a license fee or a support fee associated with it, or extensions to it could have costs associated with them. And then developers that are working on the software, they usually expect to be paid for their work. So we can't say that that it's 100% free. And again, that's the difference between the free speech and the free beer. So you might ask a WordPress developer to install WordPress for you, and if you expect them to do that for free, they'll probably say the whole free speech versus free beer thing to you. So it can have some costs associated with it. Sometimes some pretty hefty costs, but for the average user, if you're just getting a website up, you're just getting a blog up, something really basic, it shouldn't be particularly expensive. Okay, moving on to the next thing. So again, it is free. In the case of the WordPress software that you can download, it is free, as in free speech, and in free beer. So you can actually go to a website that I'll show you in just a minute, and you can download the WordPress source files, and it's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for anything to get those source files. All right, so moving on to our next section. Sorry. All right, so lesson 2. What are your hosting options when it comes to WordPress? So many of you very, very possibly became aware of WordPress through the WordPress.com platform. There are probably millions of sites hosted on WordPress.com. And I'm just going to pop that up real quick. It's a live link. So if you go to WordPress.com, you don't have to open this up right now, but I'll just show it to you. You can create a website here for absolutely free. It's going to, if you use the free option, it's going to be yoursitename.wordpress.com. But again, it's totally free for that. You can actually pay for additional features on WordPress.com. They've got lots of add-ons. I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. So they have a lot of additional themes that you can pay for. They also have other additional features that you can pay for. But just a basic blog, you can do that for free with WordPress. Again, they say without paying a dime. You can add some customization. You can add some additional premium features using WordPress.com. But that is the basic account on there is absolutely free. All right, so another option that some people use for WordPress is WordPress.org. And this is often what people will hear referred to, what you might hear referred to as self-hosted WordPress. So self-hosted WordPress is found at WordPress.org. And this is where you would actually download a copy of WordPress. Now, it's very important to note that the copy of WordPress that you download from WordPress.org is not identical to the one that's up on WordPress.com. The copy of WordPress that's on WordPress.com has been customized, it's been optimized, it has a whole bunch of extra features in it, it's got a bunch of extensions to it that are not available in the WordPress.org download. So you definitely need to be aware of that. They're very different. So you can actually just download, you can see there's a button right there to download WordPress. So I could actually just click on download, and I can just grab the files and install them on my own system if I want to. I don't have to. I can get somebody else to do that for me. And as we'll see with some of the other hosting providers, in a lot of cases, the hosting providers will do that for you. But it is an option. You have the option if you already have hosting through some web hosting provider. Let's say you're using GoDaddy or HostGator or something like that. You can install WordPress on your own if you want to. We actually do have another class that gets more into that, and I'll send out an email after we do this class, so you can, if anybody's interested in signing up for that one, you're welcome to. It really doesn't take very long to install it, just about 5 minutes, if that. But that does require a little bit of knowledge of things like FTP and setting up a database and other stuff like that. All right. Now, if you are choosing to do self-hosting, then there are a lot of options for that. You could, again, if you already have hosting on something like GoDaddy or HostGator or one of the other probably thousands of maybe even millions of hosting providers out there, you can install your WordPress on there as long as it meets the minimum requirements. And again, if we go back to that WordPress.org page, when I go to that download page, it does list what the requirements are. So in order to run, provider has to have PHP version 5.2.4 or greater. They also need MySQL version 5.0 or greater. The other thing, WordPress was built to run on Apache. It'll work okay on Nginx. It does need a little bit more configuration if you run it on Nginx, but it'll work there. And they also recommend, if you're using Apache, that you have the mod rewrite Apache module. So if you can see, there's this gray box that has a list of of what you can send your hosting provider to see. If you have no idea, you can see if they have it. So if you're going to go to the self-hosting route, then you want to make sure that they have the features, the requirements, the minimum requirements there. Now notice it doesn't say that you need to have Linux. You may have heard the term LAMP stack. LAMP stack means that it's running, it's a web server that's running Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. WordPress will also run on a WAMP stack. WAMP is Windows, Apache, MySQL, PHP. It'll actually run on almost any setup. It's just a lot easier to set up on a LAMP stack, but you do have the ability to install it on other setups if you need to. It may not be as run as well. It may be a little bit harder to install. You may not have as many features as you would on the LAMP stack, but it can run on them. I've actually installed it before on Windows with IIS. A little bit of a pain, and we had to cross our fingers every time there was an upgrade that it wasn't going to break everything horribly, but it worked, so you have that option. All right, so back to our slideshow. So now one thing to keep in mind, there are several WordPress optimized hosting providers. So these are web hosting providers that provide WordPress specific hosting, and there are several of them out there. These are a few that we've used with some of our clients at Pongos. You're welcome to check any of them out. Again, the links for these will be available in the slideshow later. I'm also adding them to this showcase in the Hangout. So if you're logged in through the Google Hangout, you should see that I'm turning them on, and you can click on the links for each of these. So some of these hosting providers are Bluehost, Media Temple, DreamHost, Pagely, and WP Engine. These all have some WordPress optimized options for you. And we are going to take a look at just a couple of these. So for example, for WP Engine, just going to take a look at the WP Engine offerings. We can see their plans, and you can see that their plans start at $29 a month, and they go up from there. So they're the $29 a month for the average site, if you're blogging or you just have a personal site, that is probably fine. It goes up from there, $99 a month if you're running a professional site, and they always ping you when you go on there to see if they can help you. Just to give you another option, we also have DreamHost. DreamHost has sort of a flat So flat rate, so if you look at their WordPress hosting, it's pretty inexpensive. It is currently $19.95 a month, and they don't go up from there. Just be aware that that you may or may not get the best performance on expensive. For most users, if you're doing something where it's just a blog and you're not getting a ton of traffic, something like DreamHost's DreamPress product might be fine. Okay, and we'll just take a look at one more, Media Temple. It's one that we have some of our clients on. And if we look at their hosting, you can see they have WordPress hosting, which is relatively new. That one's $29 a month. That will actually get you 3 WordPress installations, which might be good if you're doing this for a business. It might be good to use each of those 3, one for your development, one for staging, and then one would be your live site. So you could actually have copies of your site on each of those 3 installations. But again, it's only $29 a month. Okay, and then I'll show you all one more, Pagely, which is another good WordPress optimized one. And you can see they're $24, and they go up from there. What's the difference between a $24 account and a $999 account? That's per month. So what are you getting with those 2 different price levels? You're getting a lot. You're getting quite a few things. So you can see in the case of Pagely, in the $24 a month, you're only getting 1 site and 5 gigabytes of disk space, 5 gigabytes of bandwidth, and then 20 gigabytes on their CDN, their content distribution network. On the $1,000 a month one, you're getting 35 sites, 50 gigs of disk space, 200 gigs of bandwidth, and 1,000 gigs on the CDN. The other thing is the VPS, this $1,000 a month one, it's got load balancing. It's going to be tuned for performance a lot more than the $24 a month, which is probably going to be on a shared server where you've probably got maybe a few hundred people using the same resources as your site, and they might use more resources, so your site might run a little bit slower. So in something like this, they're actually putting you on a virtual private server, so your resources are your resources, and nobody else can use those resources. So if you're thinking, well, wow, there's a lot of options, how do I figure out which one? We got our little thoughtful orangutan here. Which one should I pick? There are a lot of things to think about. So number 1, what is your budget? If your budget is $20 a month, you get a $20 a month hosting. That's pretty simple right there. If your budget's a little bit higher than that, you have a little bit more that you have to consider. How much traffic do you expect? A $20 a month hosting plan probably isn't going to support a ton of traffic. So if you're thinking that your blog's going to get 1 million visitors a day, that $20 a month site might not be robust enough to handle that. And you might get your site visitors might be complaining because they're not getting very good response times on your site. Another thing is, do you want to manage the server or do you want somebody to manage it for you? So there are other options in addition to the ones that I had listed there. For example, we have several clients using some hosting providers such as Firehost or Pier 1. In each of those, they provide dedicated hosting where they basically give you a computer in their server farm and you run it. You have to install everything, all of the software, all of the add-ons and everything. And by software, I mean the web server, any web server modules, you have to install them. They also do managed hosting where they're going to do that for you, and they'll go over and restart the box if you need to or something like that. But a lot of the web hosting, the WordPress optimized hosting providers will do all of that. All of that for you. Another thing you want to consider is, do you plan to do the WordPress upgrades? That's actually a really big deal. WordPress upgrades come out pretty frequently, usually at least a couple of times a year. So do you want to be responsible for putting those upgrades, installing those upgrades on WordPress on your site? It's really important to do those pretty soon after they come out, because if you don't, then your site could be vulnerable. A lot of the fixes that come out for WordPress, a lot of the dot releases are security patches. So you want to make sure your WordPress site is as secure as possible, and so you want to do those upgrades when they happen. Do you need direct access to your files in the database? I'll tell you now, if you're using WordPress.com, because that is one of the hosting providers available for WordPress, you will not have access to the files or the database. On most of the other hosting providers that I've already mentioned, so Bluehost, DreamPress, the DreamHost DreamPress product, Media Temple, you actually have access to your files in your database. So if for any reason you need those, or you need them, for example, to move from one hosting provider to another, you have access to those and you can get them if you need to. Are you going to do backups? A lot of these hosting providers do offer backups. Some of them offer it at an additional cost. So that's one thing you want to consider when you're researching which hosting provider to go to. And again, going back to what's your budget. So we do recommend if you don't have a hosting provider that does backups for you, that you do them yourself on a pretty regular basis. Just because you never know what could happen. The hosting provider could go under, and you don't have access to your site anymore. Doesn't happen very often, but you always want to think worst case scenario, what would happen? Or somebody might hack your site and you don't have access to it anymore. You might need a unhacked version of your site to be able to roll back to. So again, some hosting providers provide that for you, some don't. If they don't, then you want to make sure that you're doing that yourself. What are you going to do about security for both the server and the WordPress site? If you are managing the server, you're typically responsible for the security of the server. So things like the firewall, making sure ports are closed, and a whole bunch of other stuff that is very server admin specific that a lot of us probably have no idea what to do with. So if that sounds like you probably don't want to be the one that's managing the security. The other thing to consider is, do you want to manage security of the WordPress installation? So WordPress, if WordPress gets hacked, are you able to fix it? If not, then you probably want to find somebody to do that for you. Or I'll mention a little bit later on, you can also, there was actually several plugins that you can use within WordPress, extensions to the WordPress configuration that allow you to manage security for the WordPress site. So just a lot of things that you need to think about before you do it. Some of those security extensions for WordPress are included in hosting for some of the hosting providers. So again, very important factors to consider. Another thing is, are you planning to install plugins? In some cases, hosting providers won't let you. For example, WordPress.com, you cannot install plugins on there. Plugins are extensions to WordPress functionality. If it's already existing on their WordPress.com installation, you can use it. If it doesn't, you're out of luck. But a lot of the other hosting providers that I've mentioned, they do allow you to install plugins. But one important thing to note is they don't necessarily let you install all the plugins. So a lot of them actually curate the plugins and will only let you install plugins that they know are going to work on their system and aren't going to cause performance issues for your site or for other sites on the system. That's really important. If you're using a plugin that is making performance really horrible for everybody, then they're going to make you stop using it because it's really horrible. So just another thing that you need to consider. Now, as far as installing WordPress, many of you, if you already have a WordPress site, you probably, if you are using one of those hosting providers that I mentioned, or if you're using something like GoDaddy or HostGator, a lot of them have what's called a one-click WordPress installation. If you're not sure if they do, check with your hosting provider. But for all of the WordPress optimized providers that I mentioned already, they either have a one-click setup where you just click a button and it installs WordPress for you. It does all of the setup on the back end for you. You don't have to worry about database or PHP or anything like that. It just does it for you. If you're not sure, contact support for your hosting provider and they can let you know if they have a one-click installation. If they don't, you might need to install it yourself. It's not super hard. It's also not in the scope for this class, so we're not going to cover it, but I am going to mention that there's this really neat thing called a Bitnami installer, and I have it installed on my computer, and I'm going to use it to show the demos. One thing to think about, it is actually really, really useful to have a local installation of WordPress on your computer. The reason that it's important and really useful is you can use it. If you're not sure what's going to happen if you do an upgrade on your site, try it on your local installation first. If you're not sure what a theme is going to look like before you put it up on your live site, install it on your local machine first. So you can actually have a copy of WordPress on your computer. I find this really useful when I'm traveling for work or for fun, and I want to just play around with WordPress, but I might not have Wi-Fi for some reason. Or I may not want to connect to the Wi-Fi at Starbucks or something like that. So I have a local installation on my computer that doesn't require access to the internet. I can just open it up on my computer and it runs everything. So that's done with something called a Bitnami installer. There are Bitnami installers for many different computer setups. I personally am using the one, I'm on a Mac, so I'm using the Mac OS X one, but you can see there's for Windows, Linux. You can install any of those if you want to. What this will do is it'll download an executable that you just double click on to install, and it will install WordPress along with PHP, MySQL, Apache, everything that you need, and a couple other things. It actually installs Varnish and a couple of other things that you can use to run WordPress on your computer. Now, it's not necessarily the best thing. You wouldn't download this and install it on your web server, on your web hosting provider. You can, but you might want to do a manual installation instead. But so this is just a really nice way to download it and have a dev copy on your computer. All right. So next thing we're going to talk about, we're moving on to lesson 3. And actually, before we do that, I'm just going to double check my email, make sure that nobody else has signed up, because I had a couple late comers. I just want to double check real quick, sorry. All right, I think we're good. If you're just joining us, I believe if you just started, when you just start, you're going to be on a delay. So you might not be where we are just yet, but you can watch through and get all the information. If you have any questions at this point, again, you can use that Q&A, the Q&A tool. Let me just check and see if there are any questions in there. Doesn't look like there's any questions in there just yet. So if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to ask away, and I will get to them as they come in or as we have a stopping point. All right, so back to our demo. And you may also notice if you're in the Google Hangout, there's a little sidebar that's called the Showcase. That's just going to have links to a bunch of the stuff that I'm talking about. So you have the links there if you need them. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is lesson 3, managing the content. So first thing we're going to do, we're just at this point we're assuming that you have WordPress installed, either on your web hosting provider or on your computer. I'm not really assuming that you personally have it, but I'm just for the purpose of this demo, I'm assuming that WordPress is installed, and it is on my computer. I just installed it before we started class. It only took about 2 minutes. So I'm going to open up what's called the WordPress dashboard. So we're going to take a look under the hood. So if I click on this, it's going to open up a link on my computer. Notice the URL says localhost, a bunch of other stuff. So this is actually on my computer. Localhost means it's on my computer. So I'm going to log in. And this is my dashboard. So this is what you'll see in WordPress with a pretty standard installation. The Bitnami installer has a few extra features that are not necessarily in what you download from WordPress.org. It has a few extra plugins installed that aren't going to be in the source files that you would get from WordPress.org. But we'll talk about those a little bit later. So the actual site is going to look like this. So this is the dashboard for my site, and this is my site. Okay. One thing important again to note is the URL. So look up at the top there. It says localhost :8080. That :8080 is the port for the web server /WordPress. That /WordPress takes me to the WordPress installation. This is the front end. And notice in the back end, have it remember me so it doesn't time out so quickly. On the back end, you can see that all I've added is, I had the same URL, but I've added wp-admin. So if you've got WordPress on one of those hosting providers that I mentioned, they'll usually send you links to your WordPress site and to the dashboard or the admin area. And just remember the dashboard is typically, it's not always, but most of the time, it's going to be the URL of your WordPress site with a /wp-admin on the end of it. So we can see the WordPress dashboard, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Nothing too complex. There's a lot of stuff on here, but we will go through a lot of it. All right. So we're going to take a look at some of the settings in WordPress and some of the content types, including two of the most important ones when you first install WordPress, which are posts and pages. Okay, so first thing, we want to look at the settings in WordPress. So we're going to look at general, discussion, and permalinks. So I'm going to go back into my dashboard. And in my dashboard, I will go to my settings. You can see on the left side of this, the dashboard, I have a nice menu. One thing to note, the WordPress dashboard is responsive, which means that if you make this smaller, if you make this narrower, you can see the menu goes up to the top. Like that. If you make it wider, it stays there on the left. And you can see at some point when you're, this is probably about tablet width, it'll just turn into icons, so it's still there. The WordPress dashboard will work on your phone. It'll also work on a tablet. The experience is okay. It's not stellar, but it's better than nothing. So I personally prefer to work with WordPress on a laptop or a desktop computer. It's a little bit harder to use if you're working in on a tablet or a phone, but it is possible to do. Another thing to note is that there are WordPress apps that you can use to manage your WordPress site from your tablet or your phone instead of using the WordPress site. So just something to be aware of. If you're on vacation and you need to post something, you can do it from a tablet if you need to, or from your phone if you need to. All right, so we're going to go to the WordPress settings, and I'm going to choose General and go in here. Okay, so on the General Settings page, a few important things to note. We have a site title. The site title is going to be displayed. It depends on how the WordPress theme, the theme is what handles the appearance of the site, and we'll talk way more in detail about that a little bit later, but the WordPress theme is going to determine how that title is displayed. So in the example of the WordPress theme that we're using by default, which is the 2014 theme, you can see that the title, which I have set to the Primate project, is in the tab for the web page, which means it's in the title tag in the HTML, and it's also found here in the top left corner. So that's where the title is. Next thing is there's a tagline. Again, this is the theme. It's theme dependent. So your theme may or may not display the tagline. If it does, then you're going to want to set this to something nice. I'm going to change this to Learn About Primates, and when I hit Save Changes, if I refresh this page, you can see that changed the title, that changed the tagline there. It also changed the tagline, in this case, in the tab because it's part of the title. It's actually part of the title tag. All right, a few other settings that are pretty important in here. The email address for the admin, make sure it's set to whoever should be receiving notifications from the site. So when new users register or anything like that, then or if there's somebody who forgot a password, this is the email address that those notifications will be sent to. Another thing that's important here is the new user default role. Subscriber for most of your sites is probably going to be good. I wouldn't recommend using administrator because that means that people have access to this dashboard and can change anything in the dashboard. They can change the settings, they can change just about anything. So you can set a user to an administrator, but you don't necessarily want that to be the new user default role. So I would just leave that at subscriber unless you have a specific reason not to. Another thing that's important is the time zone. So you want to set this to on your site. By default, it's going to be UTC plus 0. So you can see right now it says it's 6:37, which it's not, at least not for me. It's 2:30. Well, it's 2:39. If I refresh this, it would update the time. But I want it to be my time zone. So I'm in the Eastern time zone. So I'm going to use New York. I'm near DC, but they don't have Washington DC listed, and here New York is the closest one. So find the city that's closest to you. They have it subdivided by continent. I think they have North and South America and Central America in one. They've got all the different continents listed in there. So you'll select your time zone. This is actually important because post times are going to be listed using that time zone, and any events or anything that you have listed on your site are also going to be listed using that time zone. So you want to make sure that it's the time zone that's relevant to you or wherever the website is based. So pretty important to add that. Another thing we can modify is the date format. So this is going to show up on your website in various places. So you can see right here we've got October 22nd, 2014. I can change this to have it display differently if I want to. Same thing for the time format. So if you want to have all caps for the AM PM, you're able to do that as well. Another thing that caught me off guard when I first started using WordPress is this week's starts on setting. Week starts on setting. If you have a calendar displaying the archives of your posts in WordPress, this determines what day the calendar starts on. So for the longest time, I was looking at it like, why does the week start on Monday? It's because of the settings. So I usually go in here and change that to Sunday, so that it looks more like the calendars that I'm used to. So it'll look like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then finally, you can change the site language. So this is going to modify the dashboard, so it should display the dashboard in a different language, and it'll also modify the encoding for the WordPress site. So I'm going to hit Save Changes, and if I refresh, you have to refresh because otherwise the changes don't automatically show. You have to refresh the page to see what happened. So not a big deal here. You didn't really see any change, but if I had a menu, which I'll show you, or sorry, a calendar, which I'll show you a little bit later, then it would have displayed on there. And if I look at my Hello World post, I'll actually change the date setting so you can see how that changes. Just change that, and I'll refresh this page, and you can see that date setting is reflected in what I changed it to. And you can see there's the time setting for the comment. All right, so the next thing we're going to take a look at for settings is discussion. So discussion is comments on your site. If you're using a service like Disqus, D-I-S-Q-U-S, you can ignore this because you would actually just you would install the plugin for that, and you would use that instead, and it's got its own settings on its website. But if you're using the built-in WordPress comments, then this is where you would do them. So if you go to the settings menu, there is a section called discussion. And this has several settings related to the commenting feature on your WordPress site, which are built in. So number one, if you link to an article from your site, it'll attempt to notify that blog. It'll send a ping back or a track back to that blog, to that other site. If you want users to be able to comment on posts, you make sure that that setting is still checked. They allow people to post comments on new articles. Just make sure that that is still checked. Another thing that you want to make sure is you don't want users to just be able to add their comment without having to fill in some additional information and have it appear directly on your website. I mean, you might, but if you do that, you're going to end up with a ton of spam and a ton of comments about Gucci purses, Cialis, Viagra, endometriosis, all kinds of random stuff, whatever people want to spam you about. So just be aware that you probably don't want to just let every user comment. So there are some additional extensions that you can use to prevent that, and we'll look at those a little bit later on when we talk about plugins. But for now, the built-in WordPress settings, you can eliminate some spam from the site at least, not necessarily from getting submitted, by requiring the author to fill out a name and email. Now they can fill in bogus name and email and it'll still work for them, just something to keep in mind. So this isn't going to end all spam on your site. You could require users to be registered and logged in. I usually don't, because I don't want users to have to register and log in. It depends on the site, though. In some cases, you might want to have users register for the site. So I'll leave this off for right now. Another thing, help prevent some of the spam, where in the section where it says before a comment appears, before a comment appears, the comment must be manually approved. If you do that, then anytime somebody submits a comment, you have to approve it. So if you have a pretty active site and people are commenting pretty frequently, this means that you have to actually approve every single comment, and that could take up a good chunk of your day. So you may or may not want to do that. Depends on the site. But you also have the option where the comment author must have a previously approved comment. So what this will do is if the author name and email matches a existing author name and email, then the comment will appear. If you turn that off, that means that the comments will appear regardless. So you don't have to approve any comment, and anybody who posts a comment, it'll automatically appear. But it might be better to just check this box where it says comment author must have a previously approved comment, because that way people that have already posted on your site, have already posted comments on your site, get sort of a pre-approval. Again, there are plugins that you can use to fine-tune this. So you might want to have comments for users that have already posted 4 approved comments. So it means they've been active on the site. There are plugins that you can use for that. Another thing to note is that you can add some moderation to comments. So if, for example, you just want to have, let's say that somebody has already had an approved comment, so they've got on your approved, your sort of whitelist for approving them, you might want to just make sure that they don't get to post comments that have the words Cialis in them. That's a pretty common bit of spam that goes up on WordPress sites, or it doesn't have Gucci or anything like that. So I would recommend, if you're getting a lot of spam, turning this on and adding some of the sort of keywords that are coming up in your spam to this list. So it is an option that you have. Another thing that you have you can also blacklist people. So if you want to blacklist anything that that has somebody's IP address, if somebody is spamming you from an IP address, you can put that IP address in there. And the comments moderation, the comment section, will actually show you if you look at the comment. If it had an IP address, I did this locally, so it doesn't give me the IP address. But if it was submitted by a web user, then it will show the IP address in there. So just another feature that you have. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about after discussion is one that I think is one of the most important things about setting up your WordPress installation. When you first set up WordPress, with Bitnami, it's a little bit different, but when you first set up WordPress, typically the permalinks, which is how the link structure is set up for the pages and posts in your site, looks like this. So it's going to be your URLs are going to look something like this, where you've got this question mark p equals 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to save this so you can see what that means. So if I go to my web page and I click on Hello World, and then we take a look at the URL, you can see it's localhost :8080/WordPress/ p equals 1. It's not a very pretty permalink. I have no idea what's on this page just by looking at the URL. Now if I go to the sample page, this is a page in my website. I'm clicking on a page in the menu. You can see the URL is the site URL $p equals 2. Again, not very pretty. So when you first set up your WordPress site, you want to double check your permalink settings. Again, it's under settings and then permalinks. And you want to make sure that it's not set to default, unless for some reason you like that, then that's okay, I'm not going to judge. But you want to make sure that the permalinks are set to something else. So I personally prefer month and name. The reason for that is because I typically don't post more than 1 post per day. So I don't need to archive down to the day of the month, which is another feature you have here. But I'm usually posting several in a month, and I don't need to archive down to the day. So I like to pick month and name. So if I save my changes, what that's going to do, when I'm going to refresh this page, right now you can see it's page ID equals 2. When I refresh this page, you can see now the URL is much prettier. It's the URL for the site /sample-page. Much better URL. If I go to Hello World, you can see that that one is set to the URL of the site /2014/10/hello-world. So again, much nicer URL that we have there. And again, this is the permalink settings. So I prefer month and name. You can pick whichever one you want, but that's what you have available. This does require that, if you remember back from when we looked at the WordPress requirements, this does require having that mod rewrite turned on for Apache. If you don't remember what that is, or you don't know what that is, ask your web hosting provider. So if you turn on day and name or month and name and it doesn't work for some reason, check with your hosting provider and just say, hey, is a mod rewrite, and it's mod_rewrite. Is that turned on? Because if it's not, then it may not work. You might only be able to do the question mark p equals 1, 2, 3. Another thing to note is if you're on a Windows computer, your URL might look a little bit different. So it might be something like the URL /index.php/ and then the pretty permalink. So it's just something to be aware of. It's set up differently with different hosting setups. So just check with your hosting provider if you have any issues with that. All right. So those are the basic WordPress settings. Next thing we're going to take a look at is WordPress content types. So before I do that, I'm just going to double check my email again one more time, make sure nobody else is trying to get into the class. A little bit late, so give me 1 second. Looks good so far. Okay, so I think we're good. Just double check. And I don't know if you all noticed this, but I'm actually using WordPress for the class site. So the learn.pongos.com is a WordPress site, and it's using a bunch of plugins to manage the classes and a bunch of other stuff. So it's pretty cool. All right, so we are going to look at the built-in content types for WordPress. So WordPress out of the box, even though it's not really a box, it's more of a zip file, WordPress comes with 4 content types: posts, pages, media, and comments. You can extend WordPress to include additional content types such as resources, menu items. So like if you're running a restaurant website, you could have items from the menu. You could have library, document library. You could have a DVD library. You could have just about any type of content you can think of. The only thing is those types are not built into WordPress. Those need to be WordPress extensions. Lots of ways you can do that, but that by default, WordPress comes with the content types that you have listed here. One thing I hear from a lot of developers that don't use WordPress is WordPress isn't flexible. It can only support some basic content types. That used to be true, but for the past few years, WordPress can support just about any type of content that you want. And I will mention a couple of ways to add those content types a little bit later in this webinar. All right, so the first kind of content we're going to look at is posts. So posts are what you're probably used to thinking of when you are looking at a WordPress site that's a blog. So posts are going to be content that's associated with a date. And again, for bloggers, this is going to be the bulk of your content. They can have taxonomies applied to them, so ways to categorize the content. In WordPress, the built-in taxonomies are categories and tags, and I'll talk a little bit more about what each of those are in just a little bit. But so a post in WordPress is going to look like this. So this is a WordPress post. This is my hello world. By the way, this is default content that came installed with WordPress. So and when you download WordPress from wordpress.org or you do the one-click installation, it's going to come with a default post with a comment and a sample page. So you have a little bit of content in there to look at so your site's not completely blank. You can go in and delete it before you go live. You can leave it in there if you really want to. I usually delete it. So in the case of the WordPress post, you can see that it has a title, it's got a date related to it, an author related to it, and it can also have comments related to it. Right? As far as managing those posts in the dashboard, there is you might notice, a posts menu. So if I mouse over the post menu, if I click on posts, or if I go to the all posts sub-menu, there are all of my posts. You can see there's one, which is the Hello World post. We're not going to look at that just yet because I think it's a little easier to understand the posts from a new post versus an old existing post. So I want to add a new post. Again, 2 ways to do this. Actually, more than 2 ways, but the 2 ways, actually I'll show you 3. So in the dashboard, one way you can do it is under the posts menu is you can choose this add new, or on the posts page you can choose add new. And then also at the top of the dashboard, there's an admin toolbar. You can choose new and then select post. So any of those will take you to the exact same place, which is the add new post screen. So in the add new post screen, you can add a title. I'm going to add Monkey Mania as my title. And then I'm going to press either return to create the new post, or let me delete this one so you can see it. So if you pressed enter or return, that would actually save the post. Otherwise, and I did this on purpose, if you press tab, it's going to add, it's not going to add the post. It's basically just going to leave the dashboard, the screen, the add post screen with the content in it, but it's not saving it. So the reason that I added a post with the same name as the one that I just added is so you can see this little thing right here. This is what's called the slug. That little area that was highlighted in yellow is called the slug. Notice that it's monkey-mania-2. The reason there's a 2 there is because I already have another post called Monkey Mania. It's in a draft, but it's called Monkey Mania, so you can't reuse posts. Sorry, you can't reuse slugs within WordPress. So if you have an existing post, I'm sorry, it's in the trash. If you have an existing post, this would be the Monkey Mania. If you have an existing post or page using that slug, and you want to reuse it, then you either need to change the slug in that or delete it. So in this case, I'm going to delete it. I'll go back to my draft post, and I'll keep editing from there. Now you can see this is now Monkey-Mania instead of Monkey-Mania-2. So again, this is called the slug part of the permalink. It is changeable. So I do want to point out, if I try to change it to Monkey-Mania with a cap, when I hit OK, you can see it makes it lowercase. If I try to change it to Monkey-Mania with an exclamation, it gets rid of that exclamation. It's going to get rid of any punctuation that you have, except for dashes. Although I don't know if it lets you do double dashes. I don't think it does. No, gets rid of a double dash. So it'll get rid of, if you have a question mark, you have anything in there, it'll get rid of it, and it'll lowercase it, and it'll add dashes in place of spaces. All right, so the next thing is you have this area where you can put your content. So this is the content. There is a toolbar, and you can see I'm toggling it. I'm using this toolbar toggle. They used to call it the kitchen sink toggle to give you some more features. So if when you open up WordPress for the first time, it's only got that single line in the toolbar, there is an icon at the end of the toolbar that you can toggle to see multiple. You can see 2 rows. So you can add your content if you're familiar with Microsoft Word or Google Docs or anything like that. It's pretty similar. It's a what you see is what you get editor. It's sort of what you see is almost more or less what you get. So you can just start typing. I just typed in a little bit there. You can select text and make it bold if you want to by clicking on the bold icon, or you can also use the command keys that are used in Word and other word processing software. So for example, on a Mac, bold would be Command B. On a Windows computer, it would be Control B. You can also italicize. Again, it's Command I or Control I. One thing to note, you can add underlines. I would not recommend doing that because, as you probably know, underlines usually indicate a link. And unless it's a link, you don't want to put an underline there because people are going to click on it and it's not going to go anywhere and they're going to tell you that your site is broken. So I would not recommend putting underlines under words that are not links. Speaking of links, you can add links to this content. So if I select the word monkeys, there's an icon that looks like a chain. I can use that to insert a link. My links can be inserted to any URL. We'll do Pongos. And you can add a title. And you can have it open up in a new a new window or tab, or you can have it open up in the current window or tab. I'm going to just check that for right now. Another option that you have is to link to an existing page in your website. So and it would just automatically update the content up there for you. So, but I want to use an outside site. And I'm going to click on Add Link. You can see it highlighted there. All right, so a few other things. There you can see there's lots of text editing features in here. I'm not going to cover every single one, but you can add your standard bulleted list. You can add numbered lists, block quotes, all kinds of neat stuff. So they're all built in there. Another thing to point out is you can, I'm in the visual editor, you can switch to text. So if you are comfortable with HTML, you can absolutely click over to the text view and that will let you edit HTML. Just be aware that unless you're an administrator, if you add things like iframes or JavaScript, when you hit publish or save or update, it's going to strip those out. So just be aware of that. Also, even if you are an administrator, it may still sometimes strip stuff out. So it's a good idea not to add any JavaScript or iframes or anything like that in your post content or in your page content because it's a potentially a potential security risk. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing that. But notice if I add a new line here, I'm pressing Shift Return to add a new line. When I look here, it just adds a new line after the word R. Doesn't add, if you're familiar with HTML, that would normally be a BR tag. It doesn't add the BR tag because when you save it, it'll automatically keep track of where you had line returns, and then WordPress will automatically add those BRs in where they need to be added. The other thing is if you, instead of pressing Shift Enter or Shift Return, I just pressed Enter, you can see it adds a larger space there. So it's going to make this a new paragraph. And again, it automatically adds the code for that in the HTML when it displays it. And we'll take a look at that. So I'll leave that BR there, and I'll actually add another paragraph. And then once we save this, we'll take a look at the source code so you can see what it does with that. But again, if we look at the text, you can see there's no BRs or paragraph tags in there. Excuse me. So another thing I want to point out is at the top of the screen there is a Screen Options tab. So if you wanted to be able to access the discussion for this particular post from, or actually I'm sorry, from posts in general, you would just check that. It's off by default. or if you want to check any other features there. So if you want to be able to change the author or anything like that, you would have to change the screen options to do that. So by checking the discussion, it made it so that I can allow comments, which is the default, or not allow them. So if I have maybe a particularly controversial post where I don't want people to comment on it, or just in general, if I don't want people to comment on it for whatever reason, I can uncheck that box. The other thing, I'm currently the only author in this WordPress site, but if I have a WordPress installation with multiple authors, and maybe I'm just posting this on behalf of somebody else, I can select them as the author if I need to. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the right column of the edit post screen. Although if you're on a much narrower version of WordPress, so if you're looking at this on your phone or your tablet, that's no longer the right column. It gets pushed down to the bottom. But we'll take a look at the right column at this point. So a few things we have here. Number one is you can save as draft, so you don't have to publish something. If you're working on a post and it's going to take you a few days, save it as a draft. It doesn't have to go live right away. You do have the ability to preview it. So you can see preview. It's going to show me what it looks like so far. That's what it looks like. So whatever you've typed in there, when you hit preview, it's going to save a temporary copy of it and let you preview it. Another option that you have here is you can change the status of the post. You can see right now it's set to draft. If I click on edit, I can change that to pending review. What that will mean is that a user that is an editor or an administrator would be able to see that and approve it to have it be published if they want to. But I'm gonna leave that at draft. We also have visibility, a visibility feature here. So a couple of things with this public, that's the default setting. If you want to stick this post to the front page, that makes it a sticky post. And what that'll mean is most posts are listed in reverse chronological order, so the most recent one is listed first. You might have a post that you want to be above the most recent one. So like on Facebook, this is called like a pinned post. So you might want something like that on your site. If you do, you would just check that. Just be aware if you stick a bunch of them, if you make like 10 posts sticky, they're all going to float up above all of your chronological posts, and they may take multiple pages. So just use this sparingly. You can also set it to private. What that'll do is only users that are logged in can see it. And then you can also set it to password protected. Users that are logged in or not would only be able to see it if they have the password. And the password is per post or page. So if I typed in hello there, then when a user comes to this page, they would actually have to type in the word hello to see it. But we'll leave this as public. All right, a really cool feature that we have here. Most of you probably don't work 24/7. You might. I know for a while I was, but if you don't work 24/7, don't worry. You can publish your posts in advance, or you can schedule your posts in advance. So if you are maybe going to go on vacation, but you really have to get a post up on your blog or your site on a specific date where you're going to be on vacation, you're not sure you're going to have internet, you can write the post and you can set it to publish in the future. So you can see if I change this to November 22nd, and I'm just going to click on schedule right now. When I look at my site, you can see that that post that I just created, the Monkey Mania post, doesn't show up. But if I change this to October and publish it, there's my post, my Monkey Mania post. So if you just hit publish in the first place, it would just publish it with the time and date of when you hit that publish button. But you can schedule it to be in the future. You can also backdate it. So if you forgot to post something and you meant to have it posted on a specific day, you can backdate it if you need to. You can change the date after it's been published. So you can see I just published it, and now I say, no, I want to make it on November 11th. I didn't mean to have it for today. So now when I take a look, you can see that post goes away. But it's still there on the dashboard. It just scheduled it for November. So just because it's easier to show you some of these other features with it available, I'm going to make it visible again. All right, so two more things I want to talk about. Actually, sorry, three more things that I want to talk about. Number one is your taxonomies. I mentioned this earlier, but the built-in taxonomies for WordPress are categories and tags. So categories are kind of like, think of it like your table of contents. They're sort of like the main ideas. And then tags are sort of like an index. So they're going to be like keywords that are associated with your content. By default, all posts are going to be uncategorized. There actually is a category called uncategorized. You can change it in the category settings, which I'll show you shortly if you want to. You can also add new categories. So this might be about primates. And again, tags, they're going to be sort of like keywords. We'll just add those. And then finally, we can set a featured image. And this is, again, determined by the theme. And the theme, we'll take a look at that in just a few minutes, but the theme determines the appearance of the site, but some themes have featured images, some don't. So in this particular case, we do have one, and I'm going to upload a file. Go to my desktop. I got a lot of junk on there, sorry. It's a little messy. And I'm going to use my thinking orangutan as my featured image. All right, so if I update this, take a look. There is my Monkey Mania. All right, you can see the categories in this particular theme are listed above the title. So primates and uncategorized, and the tags are listed at the bottom with this nice little icon. If I click on any of those, it's actually going to take me to the archive page for, in this case, that particular category. So if I go to the uncategorized, it's going to show me all of the posts in uncategorized. If I go to primates, it's only going to show me the category archives for primates. If I click on mania, it's going to take me to the tag archives for mania. Now, if you ever need to change your categories or your tags, you can. They are in the dashboard under posts. So I can click on categories, and this is going to show me all of my categories. So you can edit an existing category if you need to. One of the things that I usually do on a lot of my sites is I like to actually give the uncategorized posts a nicer name than uncategorized. So I usually go in and set that. I'll edit it and change it to news. Because if it's not categorized, it's probably news of some sort. I'll update that. So if I go back to this post, you'll see now it's changed that to news, and if I click on news, you can see the URL is now news, where it was uncategorized before. Same thing with tags. You can change your tags if you need to. So if you want to modify them or anything, you can. One important difference between categories and tags, categories are hierarchical, so a category can have a parent, which you can specify in the category settings. Tags cannot. So you can see it just has a name, a slug. The slug is what shows up in the URL, and you can have a description. Again, this is theme dependent, and you can see it even notes that there. Some themes show it, some don't. A lot don't. All right, so that is the basics of posts. This is probably, again, for a lot of you bloggers, this is going to be a really important feature. Now, the next type of content that we're going to look at is pages. So pages are pages. They're pretty straightforward. Let me go back to our slideshow real quick. So pages. Pages are usually going to be what we refer to as timeless information. So content that's not associated with a date. So these would be things like your About page or your Contact Us page or something like that, where they might get updated, but it's not, it doesn't have to have a date associated with it. One thing that's very different from pages versus posts is that pages can be organized into a hierarchy. So you can have pages with subpages and sub-subpages and sub-sub-sub-subpages and so on and so forth, depending on how you have your information architecture set up for your site. The other thing is you can have different templates applied to them. All posts are basically going to have the same template unless you set up your theme to do otherwise. But with pages, you can actually select a template for it to be used. That is theme dependent, though. And the other thing is they don't have taxonomies by default. There is some code that you can add to give it a taxonomy, but again, by default, it doesn't have them. So pages in WordPress are under the Pages menu. Very similar to a post. We'll go in and add a new one, just like we did with the post. So if I'm going to add a new page called About, you can see if I press Tab, it gives me a permalink of About. This is the About page. You have a lot of the same settings that you did for your post, so you can have it be a draft, or you can have it pending review. You can modify the visibility, and you can also specify when it's published. If it's going to be published immediately when you click on the Publish button, or if it's going to be published in the future, whatever you want. So the page attributes, again, you can see there aren't as many features here as there were in the posts. So the page attributes, you can give it a parent. This would make it so that it's a subpage of sample page. And what that does, it'll actually update, when I hit publish, it'll change the slug. Sorry, it'll change the permalink. So you can see, excuse me, because About is a child of sample page, it's going to list it under sample page. If I make it so that it doesn't have a parent, you can see that it gets rid of that sample page in the slug. So that goes away. We can also specify a template. So if I actually was to look at this page, my About page, this is what it looks like right now. If I change it to use a full width page template, in this case, not going to do anything different. But if I change it to contributor page, I think it changes a little bit. Shows you a little bit different content. So this is just using a different template. But I'm going to go back to default and click update. You do have the screen options on here as well. Notice that you have discussion, comments. So there are no comments, no discussion yet. Just want to point out, I have comments turned on for this page. If I was to turn that off, so you can see what this looks like, it just hides it leaves out the comment field for you. All right, so that is the basics of our pages. See, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All right, I do want to add one more thing real quick to my page. I'm going to add some media, just so you can see media is another type of content in WordPress. So if I click on this Add Media button, you saw this briefly before when I added my featured image to my post. You can also insert images into posts and pages. So if I wanted to add this image to my post or my page, I'm just going to do this super quick so you can see that it's doable. So I'm going to just insert it and update it. And there it is. So you can see that it is reasonably easy to add it. There's a lot more in depth in our Intro for Developers class about using media, but just so you can see that this is doable. Also want to just really quickly point out comments. So you can administer your comments. You can, any comments that are added, you can unapprove them, you can spam them, you can just trash them if you want to. So there's a lot of features that you have in here. You can also edit the comment if you need to, so you can actually change the text. Somebody maybe put some inappropriate text or something in there, you can change it if you need to. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is customizing the appearance of our website. So this is, I keep referring to as themes. We are going to take a look at working with themes in WordPress. So a few things when you're working with themes. The whole purpose of using a theme in WordPress is your content is stored in the database, and the appearance is handled by a bunch of files. So you're actually separating the content from the appearance. The reason that this is really, really important is because if you want to change your theme, you don't have to mess with your content to do that. You don't have to go through and strip out a bunch of HTML from your content to get it to work in the new theme if you're just storing your content in the database and you're storing your theme in these files. So it's really important to separate your content from your appearance. Now there are a lot of themes out there. So themes, again, they drive the appearance of your website. And themes are generally broken up into 3 categories. Number 1 is usually going to be community themes. Those are the ones that are free, and they're free as in free speech and free beer. So they're actually free, like you don't have to pay for them. Some of them have some upgrades that you can pay for. And the other nice feature is they're available through the WordPress dashboard. So you can actually install them straight from the dashboard. We'll take a look at another type of theme, which is a commercial theme. Commercial themes, you go to what's called a theme repository or a theme provider, and you purchase a theme from them. So, and we'll take a look at how to install one of those, and we'll take a look at a few providers a little bit later on. Another type of theme would be a custom theme. That's what we at Pongos typically use. Some of our clients, they don't have the budget for it, so we just use a commercial theme or a community theme and customize it. But a lot of our clients want something that's very unique and designed specifically for them. So in a lot of cases, we will use a custom theme where we're actually writing all of the code for the theme from scratch. So, or using a framework or something like that. So we're going to be writing the HTML and the CSS and all the JavaScript and the PHP and all the code that goes into that theme. We're actually writing it. So as far as the community themes, really, really easy to set up. All theme stuff is going to be handled under the Appearance menu in WordPress dashboard. So I'm just going over to Appearance, and then I'm going to choose Themes. WordPress, this version of WordPress comes with 3 themes installed, 2012, 2013, and 2014. 2015 will be coming out before long. They're developing it right now. So just a reminder, this is what my site looks like right now. If I switch to a different theme, so if I don't want to use 2014, I want to use 2013, I have to first, the theme has to be installed. It already is installed for me. I can click on the Activate button, and that's going to make that the active theme. So when I look at my page again, you can see it looks very different now. Very, very different. It's because I'm using a different theme, but the content remains exactly the same. All the content's still in there. It's just that it's organized a bit differently. So if you don't like any of the themes that came with WordPress, again, you can use the theme repository, the community theme repository, and I can get in there again from themes. I can click on Add New, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of themes listed in here. These are all free themes that are available. You can install them with just a click. So you can also preview them. So if you want to see what your site would look like with that theme, you can just preview it. A lot of really good ones in here. I click on that, preview. So once I find a theme that I like, I can just hit install. So I'll just install it. You might need, if you're using a WordPress hosting provider, you might need your FTP information to install your theme. So if for some reason you get a form in here that says enter your FTP username and password and server, check with your hosting provider. So I've installed this theme. Now I'm going to activate it. And let's take a look at my site. You can see it looks very different. It's like a sort of semi-parallax theme. All right, I'm going to install another one just so we can see how they all look. I'm going to install Casper. And I'm going to activate that. And we'll take a look at the site. And you can see, again, very, very different look. But my content remains the same. The only thing that changes about the content is the layout, because that's handled by the theme. Very important to remember. Now, a lot of these themes will come with some features that you can use to customize. So I just clicked on under Themes, under Appearance, Customize. And it's going to take me into this Customize screen. The stuff that you see in this menu is going to depend on the theme. So you can see here, for example, we've got Casper options. If I was to activate 2014 again, and go into Customize, you can see I have very different options here. So just keep in mind that what you see there is going to depend on the theme. So, but you can play around with that. You can change the site title and tagline just as we did in the settings. This one supports having a logo for the theme. You've got lots of options here. Not going to make any changes to it. All right. So that is a community theme. A few things to consider with themes. When you're considering the themes, I very highly recommend that you try to find some that don't have additional content types defined. So if you find a portfolio theme, just be really careful because they most likely have the project and portfolio content types defined. The problem with that is that if down the road, like a year or two, you say, I'm going to switch to another theme, your portfolio basically will disappear because it was defined in the theme that you had, and as soon as you switch to another theme, that content type is gone. It's technically not really gone. All that's gone is the display of it. So the content will actually still exist in your database, but then you're going to need to use something else to set up the content type and all of the associated content with it. So I'll show you a plugin that you can use later on to do all of that for you. The other thing that I recommend is try to find, if you're starting a site now, try to find themes that are responsive. There are still a lot of community themes out there that are not. More and more of them are. But what that means is that your site's going to look nice at any resolution. So, if you make it smaller, it's going to still make it a little easier to use. So this site is still going to work on a tablet or a phone. All right. So next thing is commercial themes. So there are commercial themes. Some of them are free, some of them aren't. Most of them are not because they're commercial and people want to make some money off of them. Some of them are more advanced than the themes that you can find in the community. Some of them aren't. So it really just depends on what you find. Also, something to note is that some of the these commercial theme repositories offer clubs or sort of a developer license. So if you find a few that you like in there and you're not sure really which one you want, you can pay one fee to get access to all of their themes. It's usually a little bit more expensive. But when you're paying for these themes, I've seen them as inexpensive as like $5 and as expensive as a few $100s. So it really just depends on where you're getting them from. So some popular sources for commercial themes. I've got a few URLs here, and I'm actually going to make them live in the showcase in the Hangout. So if you're in the Hangout, you can see them. We've got StudioPress, Elegant Themes, Theme Trust, and Themify. Just so you FYI, the learn.pongos.com is using a theme from StudioPress. So I'm going to open up StudioPress, and you can shop for themes. And they do have a developer license, so you can actually buy all of their themes. It's $3.99, $95. Typically, that charge is per year. So you're getting a license to use it for a year. And really, the charge that you're getting is for support. So if there's a problem with the theme, you let them know and they'll fix it. Usually, not always, but it depends on the provider. So in this case, you've got a lot of themes. Most of their themes, but not all of their themes. Some of their older ones are not responsive, but most of them are responsive. You can see they've got quite a few themes in here, and they're pretty nice. Another one is Elegant Themes. They've got a lot of nice themes too. And they also have theirs is less expensive, $69 for all of their themes. Purchase them all. So lots of nice themes there. And I'm not going to show you all of these additional commercial repositories because there's a bunch of them, but there are some more there. Now, installing a commercial theme is a little bit more complicated because the commercial themes are not going to be found in this community theme repository. You have to actually upload the file. So you would still go to your Appearance, Themes, Add New, but instead of searching through the themes here, you would click on this Upload Theme button at the top. And normally the theme repository providers are going to give you a zip file, and that's what you're going to upload. So I'm going to click Choose File, and I'm going to install one of the themes that I've already purchased from StudioPress. It's going to be Genesis. So I'm going to install Genesis, I have to choose the zip file, install now. Again, it might ask you for your FTP information, and I'm going to activate it. Genesis is actually referred to as a framework, so it's used to build other themes on top of it, but it actually looks okay as a theme by itself. So if we take a look at the page now, this is what it looks like. Now, not very exciting, but it's okay. It is responsive. Okay. As we mentioned before, a lot of the customization for the theme is going to depend on the theme. So you do have, you can see very different customization in here as you had in 2014 and in the other theme, that Casper theme. Okay, I'm going to add another new theme. Again, it's going to be a StudioPress theme. It's going to be Parallax Pro. And I'm going to activate that. So when we look at this page, it looks a little different again. All right, one thing to note is that my menu is gone. I had the menu visible in those other themes. That's because the menu, the location of the menu was hard-coded into the theme. In the case of Genesis, they're a little bit more flexible, so you can put the menu pretty much wherever you want. Sorry, not wherever you want, but within some defined spaces in the site. So for that, I would actually go to menus. Most newer WordPress themes have menus available to them. So I have to actually create a menu. And I'm going to just add my pages to it. Now I need to say, well, where is this going to go? I'm going to have it go to my primary navigation. And there's my menu. You can see if I collapse this down a little bit, what it does. Oops. Close a few windows here. So again, that's with the menu. You can change the order of your menu if you need to. You just drag it. It's just drag and drop. It's a really nice feature in WordPress. You can also have subpages and all kinds of really nice stuff with the menu. All right, so that is installing commercial themes. Again, I also mentioned earlier that you can customize themes. The options for what you can customize depends on the theme. So if you've got, you might be able to customize where the menu goes. You might be able to do change the colors. You can see in the case of the Parallax theme, I have a color scheme. So I can make it green. And you can see it gives me a preview of what that will look like, or orange or pink if I want to. So we've got a lot of features here. Now the other thing is a lot of themes, not all, but most themes I would say, include space for something called widgets. So I'm going to save my customization here. And if I look under Appearance, I also have a Widgets section. So the Widget section, this is really important. The widgets that you have are theme specific. So for example, in this case, they have header right, primary sidebar, home section 1, home section 2, home section 3, home section 4, home section 5, footer, and after entry. You could switch to another theme, and I will, so you can see this. I'm going to switch to Casper and look at the widgets. And look at that, you have a footer bar, and that's it. You don't have all of those other theme options that we had, or sorry, all those widgets that we had. If I switch to 2014 and look at my widgets, again, you have primary sidebar, content sidebar, and footer widget area, so you only have 3 in that case. If you switch from theme to theme to theme, and you had a bunch of widgets in a widget area that is not available in the current widget area, it'll just put them in this inactive widgets area. So it'll keep the settings for it and everything, but it'll just put them down there. So you're not actually going to lose those widgets. But with some exceptions. So for example, if you take a look at what widgets are available, these are sort of default widgets: archives, calendar, categories, custom menu, meta, pages. A lot of these just come with WordPress. 2014 is actually a 2014 specific widget. If I change back to my Parallax theme and look at the widgets, You can see I still have archives, calendar, categories, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see now I also have several Genesis widgets. If I use a Genesis widget and then I switch to a non-Genesis theme, that widget's not going to work anymore because the widget's defined within the theme. So just be aware of that. If you are using theme-specific functionality, when you switch to a different theme, that functionality goes away. This is the same as if you're defining your content in your themes. If you switch to a different theme, that content's going to go away. So I'm actually going to, in the primary sidebar, I want to add a calendar. So you can see this. And then I need to go into my pages and I need to give my page sidebar. Oh, wrong one. Actually, we're going to do something different. I'm going to put this in footer. So I'm just dragging these around. So I look at my footer. There's my calendar. Remember before when I said the calendar, you want it to start on Sunday? If you want your weeks to start on Sunday. This is a setting. So if I go back into my settings, general, and I set my week starting on Monday. Look at my calendar, starts on Monday. So just, again, that's my little sort of pet peeve, why I changed that. I want my calendars to start on Sunday. So I do that. By the way, this calendar is archive calendar, so any date that has a post or post associated with it, it'll let you link to it, and it'll show you all. It's a sort of archive for that day. So just something to be aware of. All right, so that's widgets. All right, so the next big thing that we're going to talk about is extending the functionality of your WordPress site. So except for the appearance thing that we've done, the WordPress themes, everything that we've looked at so far has been built into WordPress. So having posts and pages, that's all built into WordPress. Having media, having comments, that's all built into WordPress. So if you want to make WordPress do something else, you have to extend it. And the way that WordPress does extensions is with something called a plugin. Plugins are a collection of code, sometimes HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, that extend the functionality of WordPress. Just like with the themes, you have community plugins and commercial plugins. All right. So again, the WordPress core can do a lot, but not necessarily everything. And then again, these plugins allow you to extend that functionality. So some of the things that you may have seen plugins for, you may or may not have known that they were plugins, are things like creating a contact form, adding e-commerce to your website. So all of you that signed up for this site, this class, used my e-commerce on learn.pongos.com. It was free, but you used something called WooCommerce, which is a free plugin from the community. You also are using another one called LearnDash, which is a learning management system that I've installed on learn.pongos.com. So you can extend functionality to do all kinds of really cool stuff. Now, community plugins are like community themes. They are free, as in free speech and free beer. And you can, just like with the community themes, a lot of them have premium upgrades, sometimes with some more options, better support. And also, like the community themes, they are available through the WordPress dashboard. So if I wanted to extend my functionality, oops, excuse me, if I want to extend my functionality, I can install a community theme, or sorry, a community plugin. Just a few things. Before you install the plugin, you want to make sure that it works with the version of WordPress that you have installed, which is currently 4.0. And you also want to check the reviews to make sure that it's not a piece of junk. So to install plugins or work with plugins, there is a plugins menu. We can go to installed plugins. There are a bunch of plugins already installed here. Most of these do not come with WordPress by default. Akismet is the only one that does. I'm sorry, Akismet and Hello Dolly are the only two that do. The rest of them you would have to download if you're not using this Bitnami installer. But I'm going to add a new plugin. So I had mentioned earlier that the learn.pongos.com site is using WooCommerce. I'm going to go ahead and search for that. And you can see if I don't recommend clicking install now unless you know for sure it is the plugin that you want. I'm going to click on more details, and that's going to give me information about the plugin. So for example, which version of WordPress, what are the ratings for it, anything else like that. It's going to be in this this screen right here. So you want to make sure that you check all of that. I also recommend that you check when it was last updated. If it was last updated 5 years ago, you probably don't want to install it. And again, compatible up to which version? Is it the version you have installed? If it is, you're probably fine. If not, you want to be careful. And then also, what are the ratings for it? Sometimes I'll also go through and look at some more, but I know WooCommerce is okay. So I'm going to hit install now. Takes a minute. It's actually copying the files over, and just like with the theme, if you want it to work, you have to activate it. So I just activated the theme. WooCommerce does require a little bit extra, so you have to actually install the WooCommerce pages. And now I've got WooCommerce installed, so I can go through and I can add products if I wanted to. If I view my product, I can have a monkey toy. A little bit more complicated, but there's a lot that you can do with it. So some other plugins that we use pretty frequently for the community plugins, we like to use a lot of stuff by a guy named Yoast, or a company, Yoast. We use his WordPress SEO. It's a pretty good plugin. So if you click on more details for that, you can see it was updated 2 weeks ago, requires WordPress version 3.8 or higher, so it should work with the most recent one. If you're using 3.7, you wouldn't want to install it. And it's got pretty good ratings, so if you install now and click activate, when you can set up your SEO settings, there's an SEO dashboard where you can tweak a bunch of settings. But the other thing that this does is for your pages, it adds SEO settings for your pages. You can actually go through and you can add, you can see what the snippet, what it would look like in a search engine. You can add your keywords and your titles and descriptions, and you can do a whole bunch of extra stuff in here if you need to. Lots of extra stuff. Another that we like to use at Pongos, so I'm going to add one more. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Yoast. Sometimes we use this. Or sorry, we don't use his. If you want to add Google Analytics, you can see that there's quite a few of them in there. In this case, you probably want to look at the one that is most downloaded and has the best reviews. So you can see this one's been downloaded. This one's been downloaded a bit more, but the reviews aren't as good. So I'm going to, although there are more reviews, so it's kind of up to you which one you wanted to add. I'm going to install the Google Analytics dashboard for WordPress. And again, I'll activate it. And in this case, we've got another menu item that shows my Google Analytics. The way that the WordPress plugin works is going to depend on the plugin. So some of them add a menu for you, some of them don't. Some of them add settings in the settings menu. Some of them don't. So you definitely want to, when you install a plugin, you want to read the documentation for it. That's actually available in a lot of cases. If you view details on it, it'll give you links to so the installation, and if it has a web page with more information, it'll give you the link for that. All right, so installing, you can see community plugins are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. You can also install commercial plugins. So again, like with commercial themes, commercial plugins are not always free. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The ones that I have listed on this slide are ones that we use in most of our sites. So we use Smart Simian. Pongos actually originally wrote Smart Simian. So we use that on a lot of our sites. It's really, really, really useful. Gravity Forms and Event Calendar Pro. So we use these on a lot of our sites. Installing a commercial plugin is similar to installing a commercial theme. So you would go to the website where the commercial plugin is found. So I would go to smartsimian.com, for example, and I would, if I want to buy the standard bundle or the pro bundle, and I'll explain what this does in just a minute. So you could go and buy it. So I want to say I want to buy the pro bundle. You go through and buy it. Once you're done paying for it, you're going to get an email with a link to a zip file that you would download, or in some cases, multiple zip files. In the case of the Pro bundle, you get a whole bunch of zip files. So just like you did with the themes, you would go to plugins, and then in this case, you would click on Add New to install the new one. And as we saw with the themes, where you could upload a theme, you can also upload a plugin. So I'm going to choose my file. And Smart Simian is actually several plugins. So I'm going to install Creator real quick. I'll activate it. And then I'll add another one. Queries. I'll add one more after that. If you have FTP access, you could also, if you wanted to, unzip the plugin files and put them in the right place on the server. Again, that's not something we cover in this class, but it is something you can do. A little bit more advanced users. All right, so I just installed 3 plugins from Smart Simian. I installed Creator, Queries, and Templates. So what Smart Simian does, it lets you create custom content types. So for example, I want to add a new content type called movie. Maybe I'm making a movie library. All right, so I'm going to create my content type, and you can see movies just showed up right there. So I can add new. It has not a monkey in it, but an orangutan. And I'm going to hit publish. So now I can view my movie. And it's got its content type. The reason that I'm doing this instead of just setting it up as a page is because I can also specify custom taxonomies. So I could say like what movie type it is. I can add additional fields. So if I go into Creator and then Fields, I can add movie fields. I can say I want to have director. I want that to be text. Or I might have it linked to another content type. I might have a director content type, and I could link to that. For right now, I'll just do text. And I'll just say publish date or release, maybe release date. Theatrical release. Theatrical release date. And I'll do preview could be maybe a video. I'll say it's going to be an MOV video. All right, so now when I save this, if I go into my movies, I have the description that I had before, but now I also have, oops, sorry, I have to add that content type to the field. Forgot to do that. I have to say I want this to go with movies. So now when I look at my movies, I have my director, theatrical release, and I could upload a QuickTime movie if I wanted to. So I'm going to click Update. It doesn't actually change what it looks like on this screen. I would use my templates to say what I wanted it to look like. So for movies, I would have post content, director, release date, my movie template. So now when I look, you can see it added those. I do have to add some HTML if I want that to be on separate lines, so I can just make that a paragraph. This does require knowing a little bit of HTML, not too much. So now if we look at that, there is my custom content type. We use this to do some pretty cool stuff with some of our client sites. So, and it saves a ton of time because your option, instead of doing it this way, is you need to learn PHP. I mean, there are other plugins that do this, but your option, if you want to add these custom content types, is to learn PHP, HTML, CSS, and write them yourself. Writing content types in WordPress. Let me show you just a sample of what the code looks like. You have to do a bunch of stuff. So you have to add a bunch of code there, and yeah. So if that looks like a really scary foreign language to you, you may want to just use a plugin to add that kind of functionality to your WordPress site. So something like Smart Simian would work for you. All right. So that's actually the last slide that we have. We have about 10 minutes left. So if you're able to access the Q&A, if you're in the Hangout, please go ahead, if you haven't already, ask some questions. I'm going to go ahead and open up. I'm just going to add these links, these last few links to the showcase. So if you want to click on them, you can. I do want to mention, you might see this on the slide already, if you are interested in Smart Simian, you can use the code WPCC, which is WordPress Crash Course 50 for 50% off any of the bundles. So we're just spreading the word about that plugin because we love it, and we would use it even if we weren't selling it. We really do love it. It's made our lives much easier when working with WordPress. Excuse me, but I'm going to go into the Q&A and see if anybody has any questions that you might have posted in there. I don't see any yet. If you cannot access the Q&A, please send me an email. It's Chrissy, CHRISSY, at pongos.com. Or if you are on Google Chat, you are welcome to just hit me up on there and ask me any questions. So I'll just go ahead and give you guys a couple minutes if you have any questions to ask them. Also, you may or may not have access to it, but there is a chat. If you have access to the group chat, if you're logged in, you can also ask questions in there. All right, so while we're waiting for the questions, I do want to do one more thing real quick. The learn.pongos.com site, I don't know if you got, I don't think you got the URL for this yet. Helps if I type the URL in, right? So if you go to the course page, and I will send this URL to everybody after the class ends, the page does have a copy of the slideshow that you can download. It's a PDF copy of it. It has all of the links that are in the slideshow that I just showed you, so you can click on them if you didn't write them down or you didn't copy them or anything. You can do that. It also has basically the notes for the site or for the course, so you can go through and you can read through this on your own. It's not the content is not complete. I haven't had a chance to finish it yet, but you've got the live version, and you've also got the YouTube video, which you can access anytime to go through it. But I will be adding the content as soon as I have a chance to. It does require you to fill it to complete it in sequential order. So you have to actually go through and look at the various topics and read through the topics in order. You can mark them as complete, and then you can view the next topic. As you complete each topic and each lesson, it'll let you access the next lesson. So you can go through this, and again, you can see my notes in there. If you want to, you can, for the course, there is on the course page, and actually on every one of these pages, the comments are open. So you do have the option, if you want to. You can see from the last version of this that we did, we had somebody that was asking some questions. If you want to go to the course page, which again, I'll send you the URL to it, you can go to the course page and you can ask any questions there. It does send me an email if you ask a question in there, so don't think that it's never going to get answered. It will get answered. If you have a question on a specific page or a specific topic within there, you can also ask it there. So if, for example, you go to the What is WordPress and you have a question about what I've written here, you are totally welcome to ask a question on there. And again, I'll get a notification, and then people can get the responses there. Okay, and I just got a question from Felicia. What are the benefits of using WordPress.com.org? And which one were you using in the demonstration? The demonstration was WordPress.org. The biggest benefit, I would say, in using WordPress.org over WordPress.com is you have a lot more control over it. So when you install, or sorry, you're not installing WordPress.com, you're just going and you're signing up for a WordPress site. Your content lives on their server. Your appearance of your site lives on their server. If you want to have additional functionality, you want to be able to extend the functionality, you can't do that on WordPress.com. If the functionality doesn't exist on WordPress.com, you're stuck. You don't have the ability to extend it any further. You can export your content and move it over to a WordPress.org site, which is what we did the demonstration on. And WordPress.org is what's going to be hosted on those WordPress optimized providers like DreamHost, Bluehost, Media Temple, WP Engine, and Pagely. So hopefully, Felicia, that answered your question. Let me see if there's any more. I don't see any more emails. I'm just checking the chat. All right. So I'll wait a few more minutes for those. While I'm waiting again, I will send the URL to the course so you can access the PDF. You actually got access to it by signing up for the course. That's why we ask everybody to register instead of just going to the Google Hangout, so you have access to the course notes and everything, so you can get to there. I do also want to point out that we are going to have some additional courses. We've been moving. We usually do live courses, so like, for example, we have an introduction to WordPress for developers, and we usually do that one in person, so you have to actually come to our office to do it. But we're going to be trying it out online and self-paced, so that's something coming up down the road. Just FYI, it'll be there. It'll be available for the general public before long. Right now, you can just kind of preview it, but that's it. Excuse me. And we will have some more webinars like this and some more topic-specific webinars like this. So if you sign up for our mailing list, then you will get notification down the road. And I think a lot of you found us through DC Web Women or the N10 discussion. So we'll post there if we have any more of these free webinars. So let me just check my email real quick and see if there are any other questions? All right, I am not seeing any. So again, you're welcome. I would prefer if you have a question after we end the broadcast, please put it up on the learn.pongos.com site, because that way everybody will benefit from it. So I'll answer it on that site so everybody else can see it. You can email me, but there is a good chance that I will probably, unless you say please keep this private, I will probably put it up on the learn.pongos.com site so anybody else that's taken the class can see it and learn from what you asked. So unless I get any other questions in the next couple of seconds, which I'm not seeing, then I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast because we're coming up on 4 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry. I see Beth Camaro has a question. There we go. Okay, Beth, please go ahead and ask your question. Let's see. What do you use for scheduling calendar for your clients? We like to use Modern Tribe's event calendar. So that was actually one that was listed here, Events Calendar Pro. This is one that we've used on a lot of them. They have a free one that you can use. The Event Calendar Pro extends it so you can do things like RSVP. And actually, the events that we use on learn.pongos.com is using Events Calendar Pro so that you can register for stuff. And so, like, if we ever down the road sell tickets to these classes, so if we want to charge for them, Events Calendar Pro has that functionality built into it. So that's what we use. But this is probably the best one so far. There are other ones out there. There's one called Timely. That's another nice one. It's free. You can also get some upgraded ones. They've got the base one is free, or you can pay an annual fee. And you can get some additional features. This one we're using on one of our clients, Oregon First. They're a real estate company organization. So they've got, where is it? Continuing education calendar. So their calendar looks like that. This is a default Timely calendar. Looks kind of like a Google Calendar. So, all right. So I just answered Beth's. I'm just going to double check the email one more time. All right, and Janie, I see your email. I will contact you offline. It wasn't a question, but I will talk to you offline. If anybody else has any other questions, I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. So again, please feel free to email me or post your questions on the event, or sorry, the course page. So I hope you all enjoyed the webinar, and hopefully I will see you again in the near future. Thanks a lot.